Hi guys, this is Taylor, and today I am wrapping up my reading for the month of July. So about halfway through the month, I was just looking at the books that I had already finished and the books I was in the middle of, and I realized that they were all by women. So just kind of on a whim, I decided to only read women in July, not for any particular reason. It didn't really have a whole lot of impact on my reading, but it was a relatively interesting experiment, I guess. So I ended up reading 5 books in July, and the first of these was Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. I meant to read this back in, 2014, when everybody else was reading this, and then I didn't. Basically, I just noticed that my library had a downloadable audiobook of this available, and it didn't have a wait list, so that's what happened. I was really pulled in by the first essay in this collection, where she explains the phrase bad feminist. I thought it was definitely one of the strongest in the collection. Actually, I think that most of the strongest essays in this collection are on the topic of feminism itself as a concept. The essays where she lost me a little bit were the ones on pop culture, which I am not particularly fluent in. It took me 5 years to read Bad Feminist, obviously. But I agreed with most of the points that she made, even if I didn't know the topic inside and out. She has a great voice for sure, and definitely kept things entertaining 100% of the time. So overall, I would say that I enjoyed this one. I gave it about a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished in July was The Need by Helen Phillips, and this was one of my most anticipated books of 2019. I was so excited for this one to come out. This is about a mother of 2 young kids who is also a paleobotanist. At work, her team keeps uncovering artifacts that are not supposed to exist, and I'll leave it at that. But at the same time, this family experiences a home invasion where the intruder knows everything about the main character and her family, and we start to wonder if these events might be connected somehow. So the first half of this book had me. I was like, this is it. This is a 5-star read. This is the best book that I've read all year. It's definitely written at a thriller pace, and I already love her writing style, so I absolutely flew through the first half. And then for me, it just kind of slowly started to lose some of its magic. There wasn't one turning point or definitive marker where everything went sour or just stopped working, but it just kind of gradually got less and less effective, almost a little tedious. And I honestly don't mind where the plot goes. I think that will be most people's issue with this. And the other thing is that while this does have pretty low ratings, like most of her books do, because you either love it or hate it, I think the marketing here was a little bit weird, because from what I can tell, I think Simon & Schuster were trying to sell this as a plain old domestic thriller, which it is not. It's Helen Phillips. It's totally bizarre. So I think some of the really bad ratings are due to that, possibly. But I ended up giving this a 3.5-star rating. I would say overall that I did enjoy this, but a lot of my rating comes from that first half. That really kind of carried it for me. The next book that I picked up in July was Written in the Stars by Aisha Saeed. I originally bought this book because I heard Rincey from Rincey Reads talk about it many moons ago. This is YA about a Pakistani American girl whose parents allow her to make most of her own life choices, but they insist that they are going to choose her husband and that she will have an arranged marriage. She breaks this rule by having a boyfriend, and her parents decide that as a punishment they're going to take her to Pakistan, where she's never been before, in order to kind of immerse her more in their culture. I picked this up when I did because after I finished The Need, I really wanted and was kind of craving another book that would totally grab me right from the beginning and that I could just breeze through. And I specifically remember that Rincey said that she was surprised by how intense this book was. So I was hoping that intensity would kind of translate to, a fast-paced book that was compulsively readable, which it absolutely did. I think I read this in 2 days. If I had had a day to dedicate to it, I probably would have read it in a day flat. It is super gripping, very intense, very dark at some moments, and all that added up to a really good read. It was just exactly what I wanted at the time. There were definitely a couple plot points that were pretty unrealistic, but you just kind of gotta go with it. It's an enjoyable read regardless. And I did also really appreciate the author's note at the end, where the author explains her own reasons for writing this book. I think it is very much worth a read if you do plan on picking this up. So I gave this one a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed this one. The next book that I completed in July was finally Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. I'm so late to the game with this one, but I'm so happy to have finally read it, and I am going to be first in line to get whatever Carmen Maria Machado decides to do in the future. This is a very popular short story collection that really focuses on womanhood and trauma and sexuality, and it does this in this kind of bizarre, surreal way that really, really worked for me. When I started this book, I was genuinely scared by how much I enjoyed the first story. I actually think that the first story in this collection is my favorite short story of all time, and you know, I was thinking if I enjoyed them all the same as that first one, I was going to be in trouble. I didn't, of course. I enjoyed some of them more than others, but most of them really, really worked for me. There's one longer story right in the middle that really did kind of drag for me, but as a whole, this collection made me so excited about this author. I don't usually connect very much to the concept of womanhood. Like, if a novel or something says that it explores womanhood or like the female identity or something like that, I don't usually relate to it very much, but there's something about the way that she writes the female experience, I don't know, that just like it got me. I was super connected to it. I don't know. So I gave Her Body and Other Parties a very solid 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm really kind of mad for putting it off as long as I did. And the final book that I read in July ended up being Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. July must have been the month for me to catch up on things that most other people have already read, because this is a massive book. It was absolutely everywhere for a while. I waited several months on the holds list for the e-audiobook of this, and I think I have staff priority, so that's really impressive. But this is about 4 generations of a Korean family, mostly trying to get through Japanese colonization, and then being Korean immigrants in Japan, and then finally it becomes about the societal and psychological impact of Japanese colonization. I would say that I appreciated this novel more so than I enjoyed it. It's written in a very removed way. It almost reminded me of reading like a fable or something. So as a result, I felt very detached from the characters. And I'm honestly not a huge fan of family sagas to begin with, so if I do read one, I want to be very involved with the characters and with the plot. So probably what I got most out of this book was a lot of information about the Korean identity during and after colonization. I never really realized what happened socially between Japan and Korea. The stereotypes that Japanese had about Koreans that are eerily similar to what a lot of Americans think about marginalized populations in the US. So I am really grateful to have read this one, and I think that spanning so many generations and providing such a detailed social context for these events is a real accomplishment. So I gave Pachinko about a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So that was my month of only reading women. Didn't really change anything, but there it is. Let me know if you read anything good in July. Let me know if you've read any of these books. If you did, you probably read them way before I did. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!